Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Lunch and Learn. I think we'll wait maybe a minute or two just to see if anybody else will join us, and then we'll get started. I think I've waited a little minute. Since it is recorded, you are more than welcome to watch this recording later if you would like to see the intro. But welcome everyone again to our Lunch and Learn for today. My name is Stevie Acevedo. I'm the curator at the Guild Museum of Arcadia Heritage. I am also part of the programs committee as well as board of director for CAM. I'm going to go over some housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is recorded and will be posted on CAM's YouTube following the presentation for your enjoyment of the greater CAM community and for the public. You will be emailed the link to view the recording once it's ready for distribution. And just so you all know too, captioning is available via Zoom if requested. If you would like to request it, please email engagement@calmuseums.org. Please use the Q&A function to send your questions to the presenters throughout the session. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. You'll be able to either upvote a question or comment on a question for the Q&A. The chat box feature will be closed for the presentation and open to you all at the end of the during the Q&A portion. If you have any technical issues during the session, please email us again at engagement@calmuseums.org. We will do our best to address it. And as we begin this event, we'd like to acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions. California is home to over 150 tribes, and an acknowledgement is just one step towards work in the Native communities to build meaningful relationships. Museums and many institutions were founded upon purposeful exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples and still benefit from their settler colonialism and associated harms. CAM is committed to moving beyond land acknowledgements and into action. We encourage all participants to learn about the land they live on and work on, to build relationships with local Native communities, and to find tangible ways to celebrate, support, and advocate alongside them. We invite you to learn more about the original stewards in your area. Some helpful, though not definitive, resources include the State of California Native American Heritage Commission and the Native Land Digital. These links will be available in the chat for both resources. I live and work in the traditional territory of the Tongva people. So today's Lunch and Learn is in solidarity, reframing visitors' experience and museum responsiveness for community resiliency. So I'll pass it along to the speakers now. Take it away, you guys.
Hi, thank you so much, Stevie. Thank you so much, Cam. My name is Esperanza Sanchez. I am serving as the moderator and will be presenting with my colleagues at La Plaza Cultura y Artes. I am a public historian, a curator, and an educator that lives in Los Angeles. And I am currently working at the Autry Museum of the American West. And I was the former associate curator when I presented this with my colleagues in CAM in February of 2026. So I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jonathan. They will also be introducing themselves.
Hello, thank you, Esperanza. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Rocha. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. I've been with La Plaza for about 3 years, going on 4, and I'm also a collector of nostalgic media that I like to interpret into music and visual art. And I'll now pass it down to Marycruz.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Marycruz Flores. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm the education coordinator at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. I'm also an artist and activist in my hometown in the San Fernando Valley. I'll pass it over to Chris.
Thank you, Marycruz. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Gurrola. So I'm born and raised in Northeast LA from El Sereno, currently a resident of Boyle Heights. I'm a public historian, and I'm the visitor experience lead at La Plaza. And I also work at El Pueblo de Los Angeles as a museum guide. And I'm just passionate about history and archiving. So Beatriz, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Beatriz Gutierrez. I am a volunteer with the Navegante program at La Plaza. And I like to contribute to just positive social activism, whether it's in small ways or big ways. And my participation in La Plaza is one of the ways in which I do that. Very happy to be here today. So back to Esperanza.
Thank you, everyone. All right, as my colleagues have mentioned, we are here to talk about In Solidarity, Reframing Visitor Experience, and Museum Responsiveness for Community Resilience. So at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, it's a museum and a cultural center located in downtown Los Angeles. It's a few blocks away from City Hall, as you can see in the background, and it's right next over to the 101 freeway. It's housed in two historical buildings, and it's adjacent to Alvera Street, which is next to El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historic District, where Chris also works. The LA campus also includes a museum, a 30,000 square foot outdoor gathering area. It has a performance stage and an edible urban garden and a teaching kitchen. And moving on to the next slide, La Plaza's mission focuses on telling the history of Mexican and Mexican Americans in Los Angeles. It collects and preserves and shares these stories. It also accomplishes and experiences Latinx people's experiences and Latino culture. And then I think we're missing the slides here, but they'll pop up in a moment. Thank you for sharing. Another great thing about La Plaza is that it's been there for about 15 years, or actually celebrating their quinceañera at the moment. And the mission obviously is focusing on telling these histories and stories. And one of the things that you can see here, the stage is it's very diverse, right? We're telling all these different kinds of stories, and it's really focusing on Latinx perspective. So it started with Mexican and Mexican American, and it's moved over to include Central and South American in our public programming and exhibitions. And we'll move over to the next slide. And something that I worked with our former CEO, Leticia Reed Buckley, was on our identity. So that's going to move over to the next slide, please. And where in that we focus on the identity of the institution. And one of the things that we developed together along with the committee was the fact that La Plaza Cultura y Artes is a community builder. So it focuses on fostering and building these partnerships with communities and institutions. On top of it, it's also doing a cultural connector. So it is focusing on the fact that it's a cultural hub, it's an institution that's educating, it's free and low cost, and it's culturally rooted in programming and developing these multi-generational perspectives and ideas, and making sure that our audiences are also being included. So another aspect of it is also stewards, and that it's a historical side. So we're focusing on being caretakers, but really focusing on anchoring ourselves as a cultural institution and important cultural assets. And the very last one, which again is very tied to our mission, is a La Plaza Cultura y Artes, is that storytelling was very much important. So it was about uplifting, amplifying, and telling these untold stories about the history of Mexican Americans, Chicanos, and Latinx people. As I mentioned, the mission hasn't evolved from Mexican American to including Latinx people in Los Angeles. So, and again, it's focusing on the multi-faith and multi-ethnical beginnings of Los Angeles as well. So we'll move over to the next slide. So when we were developing kind of this idea of what In Solidarity represented, we were in the midst of dealing with the January 2025 wildfires that were happening in Altadena and Pacific Palisades. And in January 2025, Southern California was very much impacted by this. And so was not only our community, but the surrounding communities around us as well. And there was two major wildfires. And then you were dealing with extreme heat along with dryness and these Santa Ana winds. And, 12 fires ended up erupting over Los Angeles and LA County and Ventura County. And so many people were affected by this, so many homes. And so it led us to kind of work together in so many different ways. And it was kind of this initiative that really started with Leticia Reed Buckley, our former CEO, to how can we help our community and how can we work and collectively do these efforts. So I'm going to pass it over to the next slide, and I'm going to ask my colleague Jonathan to join me in this conversation. So Jonathan, obviously when we were dealing with all of this at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, one of the things that we focused on was how do we help people, how do we help our community, how do we show that we are united and helping in solidarity in so many different ways. So I want to ask you if you could tell us more about what a love letter in Los Angeles represented and how it was very different from our typical public programming and our initiatives that we've done at La Plaza.
Thank you, Esperanza. Yes, this was a very special event, in a way bittersweet, just from the topic that we came together to put together for the community. This was something, as Esperanza mentioned, was put together by Leticia. It was spearheaded by our CEO at the time. And it was very special because it was something that I felt like we already had many events, many programs already managing, and we took the time to step away from those plannings and get together as a team to really ask ourselves, what does our community need in this period and this time with them dealing with these fires and the things that they lost. So we were very self-aware of realizing that we really needed to connect with artists and resources that were going to help elevate the weight that people might have been carrying through this difficult time. So we were very vocal on, brainstorming around ideas of what we could involve and what this program could look like for the community. And a lot of people in our department and staff and just were very vocal with bringing up ideas that they were a part of and that they felt that helped them. So as you can see in the corner, we did have a yoga organization that was Latin owned, women owned as well, and it was something that they started off and kicked off the program of that kind of set the bar of what this program was meant for. It was to just come and release any tension that you might be carrying, but also be able to build new memories and be able to provide something special for people that we felt needed this. Another thing that we also incorporated was a photo booth. We were so self-aware that people lost a lot of sentimental things that we thought and felt that there was a need for a photo booth for people to create new memories and to create a new family photo that they can start if they, if family members did lose these memories. And it was just so unique to involve everybody's creative minds, because even from our curatorial team, as you can see, we do have these beautiful heart-shaped boxes that were just created by Tom, who was a part of our curatorial team at the time as well. And these were all resources that were used in-house. A really important thing to keep in mind about this event was that we really didn't have any money. It was something that was planned last minute. So it was really unique and special to see how much love and care was able to be brought together in the short amount of time that we had to put this. And I'll even let Marycruz speak a little bit about her contributions with Little Libros. They were a group that were involved with education for this event as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. With education and knowing what was happening in the wildfires, we saw that a lot of school communities were directly impacted. Some schools were even burnt down. And just to kind of bring that, more reassurance and how can we really build resiliency to our community, we decided to give free art kits. That inside of these art kits had various uh, art supplies, but also books by Little Libros. So if we go back to the previous slide, in that top corner picture, Little Libros was there actually in attendance. We had two Latina authors reading a story time to any youth that came by. And the coolest part about it is that not only did the youth get to meet these Latina authors and hear a story written and made by them, but they also got to go home with their, signature signed book by Little Libros as well. So that was really cool. And also like another activity and message just to really promote mental wellness, because they're not only hearing it, they're also reading it as well. I'll throw it back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Marycruz. Yeah, so I mean, it was a very special event. I think for us, I know it was something that we laid out as a example of how we should be moving forward when coming together to put events. Because I think even before I started working here at La Plaza, a lot of things felt very separated. Everybody was in their own world. But as soon as something happens in the community, it really just showed the resilience that people have to come together and to reframe a feeling that might be pain or struggle. It's nice to know that we have this ability to provide a reframe of bringing people something to enjoy and to still have hope for. And then just a few things to highlight from the event, because we had so many special things. We also had a curandera, which is a shaman. It's sort of like a witch doctor that does cleanses. We had someone there that was able to do cleansing for people, which was really special. And if you see too in the center, we have an artist who does indigenous sound baths, and they do music that is sort of a way of cleansing as well. So what was special about this is that they were only scheduled, I believe, to only do 2 sound baths, but people loved it so much that he was, and keep in mind, we probably had only enough money to pay for 2 sessions. So he was very gracious enough to see how important it was to have it, that he was willing to do a 3rd session for free. So this event was really special, and I was really thankful to work with everybody that's here on the panel, and then from everybody that's on staff as well. And I really hope that we can continue to interpret more programs as we did for A Love Letter to LA.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Marycruz, for really solidifying and focusing on the fact that, La Plaza came together and they worked and adapted to provide not only these resources to the community, but really was trying to make something that was light and beautiful in order to do that. And I want to go back to Marycruz, actually, focusing on these art kits, because it's something that obviously the education department has been doing for a really long time. But how is it that this art kit was different from the typical ones that you do for the family programming that you do there at La Plaza?
Yeah, thank you, Esperanza. So, as seen in the next slide, so usually in our family days, education is in charge of like giving out a giveaway after families and youth go out to any art workshops. They usually get like this bilingual book that talks more in depth about the family day that they're learning about, or is an activity. And knowing that these wildfires were happening and knowing that these communities have lost everything, such as schools, as I was previously mentioned, or some communities lost homes and resources, we knew that like we had to act quickly. And what better way to, creatively express yourself, but also heal yourself is by creating art. So therefore, our team really assembled any supplies that we had in stock, and we saw like color pencils, markers, glue sticks, making sure that any possible activity we put all supplies needed. So like for example, that paper cup that you see by the Elmer's glue, that's to dip your water when you do a watercolor piece. And it's just really just showing that we didn't want any families to go to the store buying any other supplies in order to create something. We want to make sure we uplift and not kind of make them reflect in stuff that they don't have. And we just knew that we had the timeline, the clock was really ticking. So we probably had a 2-week timeline to design, assemble, and coordinate this operation. And yes, it was my team, the education team, really, spearheading this art kit assembly line, but it really was the La Plaza like team and believing in our mission and knowing that we are from the community and we need to serve our community in this critical time, that really helped us get us to the finish line. And with their help, the La Plaza team, we were able to really create and coordinate an all staff packing day, which I know Chris was part of this packing day. So do you want to go a little bit more in depth about your participation in the assembly line, Chris?
Yeah, I'm glad to, Marycruz. So, yeah, it was a very scary time in Los Angeles. You know, nobody knew, what was gonna happen to a lot of these communities that were impacted and, these families. And so, having our education department stepping up and using their resources, their funds to kind of reshift and pivot, where our priorities were at the time was incredible to see. And we're all La Plaza, we're also passionate about our communities, all our staff. So just seeing us give back to our communities, those impacted and just wide throughout Los Angeles County was incredible and beautiful to be a part of. And like Marycruz mentioned, it was all staff. So we had everybody from like our marketing, visitor services, education programs, like everyone was there, and it was definitely a healing space for our staff, because we definitely needed it. Like I mentioned, it was a scary time. And I think it helped kind of set the pace for the rest of the year. But kudos to our education department for doing this in such a quick um time frame, and using it as a moment to let our community know that we're there with them, which I think is a big part of La Plaza's mission.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for, really reiterating that. And in times of crisis like this, like we really definitely needed a safe space, and we definitely healed each other while healing others. And yeah, so really big shout out, big love to La Plaza team. In the next slide, so we had to work quickly because our first distribution was at a love letter to LA, which you kind of saw some photos when Jonathan was talking about. But any other kits that were not distributed in that event, we did use the help of our marketing team to do a social media call out. And that is when any schools that were directly impacted by this fire, or organizations such as the YMCA, contacted us and stated like we would love to use these art kits. And our ed team hand delivered them, and we got to see some in action, and then some students, just for like privacy purposes, we didn't put the photos, but seeing in this slide is just kind of a little snapshot of our assembly line with Mia there. But overall, we were able to distribute 324 art kits to any youth and communities that were directly impacted by the fires. And overall, we just hope that these art kits is not only just like a resource for our community, but it's also just a symbol of how our community was able to come together in a very short but critical moment in our time. So thank you. I'll pass it back over to Esperanza.
Yeah. Thank you, Marycruz. I really am glad that you focused on the fact that these art kits are very important. It's given over, obviously, family programming, but it was very impactful during something that was very critical. And the fact that La Plaza was able to mobilize quickly and utilize the resources that education department had, but really La Plaza as well. And yes, Mia Romo, our former marketing and communication specialist, is there. And I'm so glad you guys took all those photos, because it really demonstrates and documents the vastness that La Plaza really did. So I'll move it over to the next slide, because it also kind of touches upon, again, like Chris had mentioned, it really started with the fires, and then we were impacted by the ice raids that were happening right down in downtown LA in the fashion district. And here we have a photograph from the New York Times, actually, and where you see the protests that are happening right in front of La Plaza, because we were impacted in downtown Los Angeles, next to the 101 freeway. So you have the LAPD and the sheriff's department being there, while you had the National Guard guarding these federal buildings that are also surrounding La Plaza over the 101 freeway. And so here we are dealing with the fires early on, January and February, and then you move over close to May, June, and we're now dealing with these ice raids that are now impacting the Latinx community and immigrants that we serve there at La Plaza. So I want to move it over back to Jonathan on the next slide, because as we're dealing with this, how is La Plaza focusing on the fact that, people are being impacted not only by the fires, but now they're being impacted by these raids that are happening? How did La Plaza reframe its experience and museum responsiveness for community resilience during the Family Day programming?
Thank you, Esperanza. Yes, so during this time, it was very difficult to reframe what we already had established for Family Days, because Family Days are probably one of public programs' most popular events. We have 4 within the year, which is our Cesar Chavez Family Day, but is going to be changed. And we also have Cinco de Mayo, Fiestas Patrias, and Dia de los Muertos, which all already have an audience that brings families from all parts of Los Angeles to. So we really had to really think how we wanted to continue bringing folks here and feel safe, given that we're in like the heart of everything that's happening, literally just up the street from us. So at the time, Leticia Buckley had put together a, ICE protocol. So it's basically a protocol that was put together by with our marketing team and reviewed by our lawyer as well, so that we make sure that the wording is proper to share with the community to reassure the safety. It was mainly something that we wanted to share with security to kind of keep and share with staff to keep everything secure and safe throughout the program. But over time, we had to share this with vendors. We had to begin sharing it with the artists that we involved, and it really showed the resilience between artists and vendors to be a part of something that reassures the safety of our community. It didn't ever feel like people felt like, oh, why do we have to do this? Isn't this your job? It was never a response, never like response like that. Everybody that we worked with understood what we were trying to do and to secure the safety of the families. I'm not sure if many people on this meeting have been to La Plaza, but we have a pretty big campus. So for this family day, we would activate our walkway. We obviously activated the lawn and the patio, but a lot of the time we did utilize the walkway as our resource booth. So it was very special to bring resources that were helpful for the community, that were able to kind of give insight into health and into just like health, dentistry, like anything that would be helpful that the community needed. So with this whole adjustment, we really had to bring everything inside, and that affected how many resources we could work with. But it was more important for us to think of the safety, because it was a lot easier to close our doors if we had activations within our lawn, opposed to activating the entire space. So with those shifts, it did shrink the program, but it thankfully, through this work, we reassured the safety of our folks, and we still, thankfully, we didn't see an effect of family members not coming. Thankfully, we still had a good number of people coming out to celebrate the important history of Mexican and Mexican American culture. So I'm really thankful that our community continues to come and support an event that we put together for them.
Thank you, Jonathan. And it's so good that you mentioned that, because if we move over to the next slide, you mentioned the ICE policy that was developed with Leticia Buckley, and she actually presented about this actually last year in October, I believe. So it is available virtually online, but we do have the QR code there. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because obviously it changes dynamic of how public programs were being developed at La Plaza, and how it really impacted not only the community, but how the museum was responding, and really focusing on helping the community feel safe and feel like the vendors were also being included. And I'm very curious as to know, because obviously family programs are very important at La Plaza, and it obviously brings a lot of people. And I'm curious how that impacted the programming aspect for the education department. So Marycruz, you had mentioned the art kits. So I'm curious how the art kits were impacted and how they were changed to really focus on the responsiveness, but really on the community resilience. So we'll move over to the next slide, and I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Esperanza. Yeah, as mentioned, we did decide to do art kits again for when our communities were being targeted by ICE. And it was not only just in downtown LA, it was all over Los Angeles County and neighboring communities. But also knowing that we work with education, we primarily work with school communities that work with students that are from kindergarten to 12th grade. So we really had to reframe and thinking who is our audience here, and who is being impacted by these ICE raids. And that is when we notice it's not only just youth, it's our school communities, it's our families, it's everyone that's being impacted. And we decided to add different layers to these, how we're gonna reach these art kits to our community members and their families. And how we did so is really utilizing social media as a tool. With social media, and for example, like Instagram was our biggest search engine. It was figuring out where the current drives, like mutual aid drives that were being hosted all over Los Angeles County, what communities were being heavily targeted, and what donations were they currently accepting. And that is when we found out that many mutual aid drives and organizations were really needing hygiene products donations, because it was one of the most donation that was being asked for, but it was actually the least donated donation. So that is when the education department really took initiative, not only to create these art kits all over again, but also host a hygiene product drive here at La Plaza. And again, staff members went out to the stores, bought these donations such as toothbrushes, menstrual products, soaps, hair conditioner. So therefore, families can not only, save some money during critical times, but also feel a little more safer that they didn't have to do that shopping and possibly risk their lives and not seeing their family members over for some things that they really needed. Along with social media, we were able to build these on the ground alliances with local trusted organizations and initiatives. And some of them were not really established organizations. So like, for example, Alma's Closet in this map, they're currently a women's boutique located in El Monte. She opened up her doors and has like a food pantry, like donation drive. So therefore any community members can come in and take what they need, no questions asked, completely free. Along with South LA Leadership Network, their demographic is more in the San Gabriel, South LA. So knowing that we needed to partner with these other organizations because without their help, we wouldn't be able to reach that audience. And with the help again, we did some more assembly and coordination drives with the La Plaza team. We were able to also do 324 kits. But I think just kind of as my closing statement here, as creating this mutual aid drive, creating these kits, not only all over again in a hygiene product, we really know that this is like a symbol of resilience in challenging times. But we also like notice that like, how are we going to respond to our community? And back in the day, it's because we are a part of that community and our work isn't relevant if we don't serve our community. And I'll just leave as like with this quote here, because yes, La Plaza is a museum, but we are a museum of the community members. And I'll leave it with this quote of El pueblo salva el pueblo. And in English, for my non-Spanish speakers, is the people save the people. So really big shout out to our team once again, but shout out to our community members that did not get the recognition but we're doing the on the ground work as well.
Thank you, Marycruz. I really do like that quote, El pueblo salva el pueblo, and I think it really reflects the programming and the initiatives that La Plaza was taking during that really hard time. And I want to kind of connect that back because, again, the community is super important. And I want to kind of move over to the next slide and connect what you just said, Marycruz, with our Las Navegantes program. So I'm going to invite Beatriz to join in and talk about the Navegantes program, how it's reframed very differently. It is museum docent program, but it's very different in consideration when you look at the Navegantes program. So Beatriz, if you can tell us more about the Navegante program and how it also was, not only how is it different from other museums, but also how it was part of the impact and part of the conversation in helping the community feel safe and supported here at La Plaza Cultura y Artes.
I
Sorry,
think we might have lost Beatriz.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, then, if we can, I'll probably jump in for Beatriz and do a little summary. Is that all right with everyone? Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Jonathan. All right, so hopefully Beatriz is able to join us soon, but we'll move over. As you can see, here we have a Navegantes program that officially started, I think, during the pandemic. We were kind of already revitalizing our gallery volunteer program. We wanted to focus on how do we focus our volunteers and how do we develop this programming of volunteers. Oh, Beatriz, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. So I was just going to give a little summary, but again, if you can tell us about the Navegantes program and how it was established, but also how it's very different from other museum docent programs, and then how it impacted and was very much a part of the community and helping with resilience and solidarity.
Yes.
So I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. Right on time, of course. Can you everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. Hi, my name is Beatriz Gutierrez, and I am one of the volunteers as part of the Navegante program at La Plaza. At our core, we are a group of individuals, community members of the City of Angels that care deeply about the issues that affect Mexican-American people, and really just people at large. We're, I like to think, just caring activists in general, period. So if we go to the next slide, you will see a list of different backgrounds, professions that we cover in the Navegante program. And so that gives you a little bit of an idea of the diversity of our group. Just at the city of LA, we have everything from attorneys to chefs and scholars, retired police officers, and that just makes us all lifelong learners. Again, at the most basic level, we are people who are our community and bring, I think, a really beautiful array of skills, personal experiences, and then academic and professional backgrounds. So one of the ways that we participate at La Plaza as volunteers, if we move on to the next slide, is by giving tours. And we try, our main goal is to dissolve roadblocks to access and participation from our community, particularly our Mexican-American and Mexican community, because we know that there are things that are very specific to that population. So that looks like being flexible, so having tours in English and Spanish, because sometimes there's a language barrier, or customizing the length of our tours. If you can come in, you can give us 45 minutes and have a really in-depth discussion. Great. Sometimes they go over 45 minutes if the participants are okay with it, of course. Or if you want to come in and you only have 10 minutes, then we will try to hit the highlights and try to
Oh, I think she got cut off again.
Mhm. I'll just fill in for Beatriz until she pops back in. So as she was mentioning, Navegante's program does 45-minute tour and they walk around and they really cater to what the community is looking for. So if you're focusing and want to talk about immigration, she would gear the conversation to have those discussion. And if you wanted to have a conversation about the Spanish time period versus the Mexican time period, she's going into those kind of themes and subness, urbanization. So again, it's really catered to what the community is really looking for. And again, it's more of a dialogue versus like I'm driving this information and bringing it over. And it's really, really great because you're having a conversation at the same time. And while this was happening at La Plaza, at the same time, a lot of our community and a lot of people did not feel safe coming down to downtown Los Angeles because of the ICE raids and the protests. And so, now we got this, oh, come on back, Beatriz. So jump on it and mention about how La Plaza was impacted obviously during the ICE raids, and then how you were catering and changing your tours along with everyone else. But really, how did you bring people to come into the space and feel safe during the ICE raids that were happening?
Sure. Thank you, Esperanza, for rescuing me and coming in. So yes, we do a lot of customizing. It's our way of dissolving roadblocks and inviting people in, keeping in mind what it might be to be a part of this community, right? So during the ICE raids and the fires, there was a huge sense of a feeling of gloominess, heaviness. There was fear, uncertainty, apprehension. And so we understood that. So kind of, hitting back to some of the topics that were mentioned by the rest of the team here. When you have a crisis, you have new needs, and then you need to adapt and address those new needs. And so along with that fear, apprehension, and nervousness that was going around, we needed to understand that that was going to cause people to not want to come in or not be able to. And what that meant for our response is that we would, one, continue to show up for those that could or would or dared to come in, but also we needed to kind of pivot. And so if we go to the next slide, one of the ways in which we did that, which is similar to how creative and proactive Marycruz's projects were, we used technology to our advantage. So we had already the use of 3D or virtual tours of the exhibitions, but we really pushed that when the ice raids and fires were in full bloom, as a way to remind the community that we were still here for them, that we're not going anywhere, and that, you know, to the degree that we can, we would continue to show up and help out. And so I like to tell a story of a woman who came in and said, you know, I have an elderly neighbor, and we usually do a lot of things together. We go out and visit museums and do different activities. But because of the current social political climate, she's actually really scared. And so today, unfortunately, when I invited her to come here with me, she declined the invitation. Is there any way that, or anything that you can provide to me so that I can go back home and pass it on to her? And I said, yes, you can take her the whole exhibition. You can take her just about the whole museum. And so in this image, you can see me speaking with different patrons and guiding them through the use of the website and how to get to the 3D tour, so that they can go back to their communities or those individuals that feel a need to protect, which again, we understand, and to kind of keep low for a bit. And I think that hopefully, I haven't heard back from her, but I would like to think that created a moment of connection and reminding that neighbor of hers that we're still here for her, that she still matters. And there are people that are willing to provide and protect. Because to the large degree that we can at La Plaza, we like to, as I think I heard Esperanza saying, we don't talk at people, we try to speak with, and then we listen. Same thing with Marycruz and some of the other projects that the rest of the team has mentioned, right? We ask what the need is, and we listen, and then to the degree that we can, we rise to the occasion to meet that need. And I think that's it. Back to you, Esperanza.
Finally, thank you, Beatriz. I really do appreciate jumping back in. And I'm super glad that you mentioned not only how you're navigating these tours and also how your navegantes are also doing this. But again, even mentioning the fact that these resources are available for our visitors, right? At La Plaza, they're able to see our exhibitions. It's something that we've been doing since 2020 when we got that grant from the CAC Foundation, and it's still accessible. So it's still available if you guys are interested in seeing both permanent and temporary exhibition after 2020. So I kind of want to jump back to what you were mentioning, Beatriz, of how, we're listening to what the community is and we're responding. And so I want to invite Chris to jump in, because I want to move into as we're dealing with these ICE raids and these protests and people feeling like how do they get involved? How do they, participate in so many different ways? And how does La Plaza respond to this? I want to ask you to come in and talk to us about La Plaza Summer Book Club, and something an idea that came about, again, while we were dealing with these ICE raids, and how we involved the community to be involved as well in connecting with them in solidarity, but really as a responsiveness of what was going on at La Plaza and in downtown LA.
Yeah, thank you, Esperanza. And so I guess let me set the stage a bit. So I remember it was June, I think like June 6th. So I'm a museum guide at El Pueblo, working at the old Plaza Firehouse, and I hear the chopper, a helicopter downtown LA. We tend to hear that a lot. But immediately, like, I start getting text messages from my family. My brother, he works in the fashion district, and immediately, I'm getting photos of like militarized officers, federal agents, hitting the fashion district, and community immediately responding. And so it's terrible, it was terrible to go through that experience. And so me as a community member, social media, I'm like, oh man, like, how can I do my part? How can I share, what's going on? And I just remember, like, immediately, like, at the time, Leticia, our CEO at the time, she was responsive. We started the discussion immediately. Like, we got an email. She's like, hey, like, what can we do? Anybody has any ideas? Let's brainstorm. It's open to all staff. And so, funny enough, the idea for the summer book club wasn't even one of my ideas, responding to Leticia. The book club started as its own thing. So, like, as everyone has been mentioning, it was a rough year. We started with the fires, and then later on that summer, we started getting these federal agents, the National Guard posted up all over downtown LA, people being targeted in our communities, seeing it all over social media. Horrible. So our staff was going through it, and we wanted to, just look after one another, to make sure checking in on one another. And so this actually started as a staff book club. So we wanted, to get together. It's something that La Plaza had done before. I remember when I started working there was staff book clubs already. And so I kind of took the initiative, like, hey, like we should start a book club, As a historian, I love to read. I love to engage in discussions. I am a fan of book clubs. I participate in many community book clubs. And so I'm like, let's get it started with staff. And so we ended up deciding on City of Inmates by Kelly Lionel Hernandez before even any of the ICE raids started too. So I guess that's just life for you, right? So very relevant book, very pivotal book in Los Angeles history, the history of incarceration in our country, very, very relevant to what's going on today. And so I remember we had a all staff meeting, post, National Guard being posted all over Los Angeles. And so I just shared, we're like, hey, to the staff, like, I have a book club. Like, I want to start a book club. We want to read City of Inmates. If anybody wants to join, so we can all take care of each other. And immediately, Leticia, and Veronica from our marketing department, they're like, Chris, you need to open this up to the community. This needs to be a community initiative. We need to use our space, our platform for our community members, and you need to take the lead. And I think vulnerably, I'm part of the engagement and outreach department, visitor service. So visitor service is an entry point for a lot of museum educators, and I like to think we're underestimated, undervalued, and underpaid. And to have the CEO of an institution allow you, giving you that, platform, that trust to take on a program like this, a project like this, I mean, how can you not take it and run with it? And so I did. And so immediately we created a social media campaign, started posting on social media, and it was a hit. We started getting a lot of interest in the book club, a lot of community members signing up. And so I think the main thing to spotlight about this is that we reshifted, we pivoted. The year did not go how we expected, but we responded to our community because, like Marycruz said, we're all community members, and we wanted to look after our community. And so, it was as simple as providing free parking to community members because it's so difficult in downtown LA. Using our space, opening up our conference rooms, also providing a free PDF, to people, definitely letting them know to visit their local libraries, their local bookstores. But I wanted to break any, barriers to accessibility. So, sending PDFs, and, I think it was a very, very powerful space, very informative space. And I did not expect just how vulnerable community members are going to be, how honest, how trusting they were going to be. So I think it really, midway, I'm like, wow, like I really need to, make sure I'm looking after our community members and advocating for them, through La Plaza, and making sure they felt safe, they felt valued, and this could become a space that, could eventually do more good for the community and them than for us. And I think it has. And it was a really engaging summer book club, and we actually finished off with being able to get Kelly Hernandez herself to join us. Thank you to Jimena, our programs director. She really helped me with that. And I think that's another thing from this. I couldn't have done this without the staff members at La Plaza. Everybody came through for me. Like, I had never done a program like this before. It was my first time. They were very trusting, very patient with me, and I will always have, so much love for them for that. And, it's tenfold for the community. It really, showed up for, with the space and what it became. And yeah, it's just incredible to have Kelly there. And it's continuing. And so we finished our summer book club. In the fall, I did more of articles. We focused on articles from Greg Grandin and very much continued the discussion of, ICE and, what's going on politically in our country. And also, too, I was not censored in any way. The content was very up to me. Nobody ever questioned what I chose to read with community members, the discussions we were having. And I think that's important to point out because, you know, museums are political. Our community, you know, is being impacted by politics daily. And so we need to provide that space for our community members through an institution like La Plaza. You know, it's a museum, a cultural center. And, you know, that's, I think, very tied to its mission. And following that, we continued with Solito by Javier Zamora, which was an also very emotional space, very heavy content. And again, community members were very trusting. And I think that it's become a thing of its own. We've even came up with the term for our members, community scholars, which actually came from one of our book club members. And yeah, these are for all our community scholars. And I think museums are colonial institutions that, you know, they have this history and, you know, there's been a lot of work done to change that, but you know, at the end of the day, they're rooted in colonialism and they can be harmful to our communities. So now to kind of shift that and use it as a healing space and a space for our community, you know, to have these hard discussions, to educate one another, to make friends, which has happened, you know, it's incredible to be a part of that. And we'll see where it goes next.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that you really made that connection about using historians. You know, you use Dr. Kelly Light Hernandez and Greg Brannan's, especially if he focuses on Latin America and U.S. foreign policy. But then even to say the fact that you're now using authors to have those discussions with people, making it accessible is really great. And I'm really happy that you're mentioning that because I want to kind of bring it back to what was going on, not only this book club that you're doing, right, but at the same time, what's happening across the street and how La Plaza is also participating. So if we move over to the next slide, as you mentioned, you know, community scholars, we also work with artists. And in the slide that we have here, we have La Salsera, which again is by Judith Baca. It used to be at the Getty. It's now on display at La Plaza for 3 years. And it's focusing on this fact that you have these monarchs and you are focusing on this woman that's dancing and, you know, it's in the Westlake, MacArthur Park area. And again, it's really focusing on Latina community, immigration, and the things that are happening with the ICE raids and the protests and people that are trying to be involved in so many different ways. So you started the book club, but you were also right across the street when there was, you know, the Summer of Resistance. And you were working with Armando Rodriguez, who was our former engagement and outreach manager. And actually, he had won a superintendent award with CAM in 2018 for his teaching Edible Garden. So with Joanna Larios. And so I want to move over to the next slide. And see, because we had this activity obviously for our CAM presentation, but I want to jump over to actually the second slide, which is La Plaza at the Summer of Resistance, because you were able to work with Armando, engagement and outreach, but then also bring in our intern, Lorna, who was both in curatorial and engagement and outreach. And so we had worked that out with the Getty as part of the fellowship last year. So if you can talk a little bit about the Summer of Resistance, how visitor service, engagement and outreach, and also Navegantes were participating out in the community while these things were happening right across the street from us.
Yeah, thank you, Esperanza. So yeah, so as part of the engagement and outreach department, we do activations on site and in the community. And so Summer Resistance came about. So it was a reaction to the National Guard being deployed to federal buildings in downtown LA, like a 5-minute walk from us, very visible. I would see them every day walking to work. And so it was actually organized by SEIU Local 721. Shout out to them. And it was incredible. So it was the union collaborating with artists, with DJs, with educators, community members. And so they were at the Placita Olvera, El Pueblo, and from morning to afternoon at night, they were having activations from meditation to art activities to just, you know, sharing know your right cards and, you know, educating people about, you know, what their rights are. And so I remember just having a conversation one day with one of the union members, and being like, hey, like I work at La Plaza, like, is there any way we can help? How can we support? And he's like, yes, let me send you the link, sign up, and we'll see you here. And immediately I had that conversation with Armando. And again, very trusting. You know, I'm a visitor service associate at the time. And I'm going to Armando and being like, hey, Armando, I think we should be here. I think it's important to our community, and we should have our like La Salsera activation. And he's like, Chris, do the communication, let's set it up. And we did. And like I'm so happy we were able to have Lorna there, our intern at the time. And yeah, like our team, like having our Salsera activity, which is really relevant as well. Talking about migration, and these stories of where do you come from, where do you go, or we all know a salsera. It could be like your mom, your tia, your cousin. It could be yourself. And the fact that we were able to, use what we were doing already out in the community, at the Summer Resistance was pretty incredible. And then even just communicating with them. I remember when we were having our opening for our Great Day in East LA exhibition, like they were having like luchadores across the street. And I remember I went to go talk to them and be like, hey, we're having an exhibition opening. I'll make sure to tell everyone to come over here. And they're like, yeah, we would appreciate that. And also, like artists are doing screen printing and a lot of incredible artwork. I had to show my shirt by John Fleisner. Sorry for the blur. Let's see if I step back. There we go. So I got this shirt at the Summer Resistance. And, even just having these shirts and having these posters posted at La Plaza and, community members being like, where'd you get that? Like, gotta go across the street right now before they run out. I mean, that was incredible to be a part of. And I'm so happy, to be involved, in this process, and, using our platform, our resources, with the community. And yeah, that was the summer, La Plaza, summer resistance.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad that you really divulged what was happening and how you were part of the Summer of Resistance as well, but also really focusing on how engagement and outreach was out there in the community, right? You have Armando, you also have Betsy Villegas out there, Lorna, you have Navegantes, you're also very much involved. And it's super important to bring that up because as these things are happening, people are really scared, right? They're dealing with all this and how are they going to feel like they're going to be involved? And across the street from La Plaza, it was really dead. Like there was no one coming in. And so here you have, CIOU developing all these different programming and getting people involved and working with artists. So I think it's great that you're highlighting that and you have the shirt on because we ended up working with that artist for the next project. So I'm going to move over to the next slide and focus on the public art project that we ended up developing during that summer, actually, while the ICE protests were happening. This was an initiative that was coming from Beatriz Buckley. We were working with Alondra, along with myself and the rest of the curatorial team, but also we were working with our AV specialist, Alex Dreyer, and his colleagues, Ben and Ryder. And so the focus of like, what do we do to demonstrate that we are not only in solidarity, but we really are protesting what's going on, right? Because we're right in front of these federal buildings where all these protests are happening. And you have the National Guard, out there, you have the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, CHP and everything. So we developed this We Belong Here project. So again, it's these large scale projections that are still available and visible up until October, from my understanding, at least that's when we did those contracts. But it's really a projection. And on top of it, we had these neon signs that were being on displays on the first floor on the main street windows of La Plaza. And it's really focusing on exploring the themes of immigration, undocumented experiences, and really a call out to the injustices that were affecting the communities of Los Angeles. So we had this partnership, and then we had funding from the California Community Foundation, CCF. So La Plaza was part of it, CCF, Social Political Art Resources Center, so SPARC. There, and we also had the Japanese American National Museum and the Museum of Latin American Art. So it was very beautiful to have all of these artworks that were being on display, right? You have the digitization. So you have Alondra working with Alex and ensure that this is being projected along with Tom Rosenquist, who was our former lead preparator. He was also working on how do you project these images out onto the exterior walls of La Plaza. So if we move over to the next slide, I can highlight some of the artists that we were fortunate to work with. As I mentioned, we had Patrick Martinez. So these are some of the neon signs that were on display. Again, really focusing on the injustices that were happening, but really putting those messages out there. We also were able to work with Brandy Gonzalez, Ernesto Yerena Montejano, John Fleisner, which Chris is demonstrating the shirt, and also we had the silk screens as well. We also got to work with Joel Garcia, Lalo Alcaraz, a very famous artist who does all of these political cartoons and is on display. So we were very fortunate to connect with him. I worked with him at the Museum of Latin American Art a few years ago on an exhibition. And then you have new artists that are coming in, not in necessarily that we haven't worked with them, but it's now an opportunity to do that. And we did that with Las Chicas Peligrosas, Lily Four, who is Lily Flores, Man Juan, Alejandro Boli Jr. We also had Mario Hernandez, who was part of our um, marketing and communications team. And actually, he has a mural on display there with La Plaza. And he worked with Mia Romo on that as well, who was also part of our marketing communications team. And so you're still able to see these artworks on display, especially, once nightfall comes in, up until October. And again, these are images reflecting what is going on and these resilience and conversations about immigration and what's going on with the ice trades. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to move over to the next slide. So if you want to reach out to us or have any conversations, my colleagues and my information are listed here, our email. So feel free to reach out to us. But I will pass. One of our colleagues reached out and said, was anyone on La Plaza team impacted directly by the wildfires? If so, how were those staff members supported?
I wasn't. I'm from Boyle Heights, so I wasn't necessarily near the fires, but it was a wild scene to see the ashes coming and like stepping outside and just feeling the humidity. So, yeah, I wasn't officially affected by it, but I did just have the impact of just the fires and the flames from it.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I'm from the San Fernando Valley, specifically Somar, California. The two giant fires that were happening were the Palisades and the Altadena fire, but there was also like a smaller semi-big one, which was the Hertz fire, which was in Somar, actually. So it was right behind my backyard. And thankfully, my neighborhood did not get impacted, but I was on evacuation watch the entire night and week. And I remember contacting my supervisor at like 3 in the morning saying, hey, I will most likely take a mental health day because in La Plaza we utilize mental health days. And I sent her that text at 3 in the morning, and therefore my supervisor forwarded that message to Leticia Buckley, in which she was like, hey, there's some staff that are actually being directly impacted by this. How are we going to move forward with this? And that is when Leticia actually sent out all staff email saying that if you are impacted or need any more time to process, we will, honor any mental health days in the month of January. So those 5 mental health days that we get out for the entire year will not be impacted. So we had more time to like process and heal for that.
Thank you, Marycruz. I will mention I went to Palisades Charter High School, so my high school was a little bit impacted, but I obviously no longer attend there. And I had a few colleagues actually that their houses were burned down in Altadena. So a lot of, people were doing drives and fundraising. And so I was able to kind of help out with that way, but I wasn't directly impacted. But I know one of my colleagues that currently works at La Plaza was actually near Altadena fire. And so she was also on alert and staying up as well. And she was close to the fire, but luckily she was not impacted. I'll pass it over now to the next question, focusing on who are some of your mentors that got you where you are now?
Chris, I saw you were reaching over. You want to answer that one first?
Yeah, I could take this one first. I have so many mentors. But let me start off first with saying, Dr. Troy Chatterjee at Cal State LA, she was very pivotal and, pushing me as a historian and, seeing that, I did not just have to go the traditional route and, go in academia. I can, be more involved with community. And so I got the opportunity when at Cal State LA doing my master's, to be involved with the community garden and doing historical research, on Spanish exploration and, Spanish documenting indigenous foodways and the ethnobotanical knowledge. And I think that's really was very pivotal in showing me that, yeah, you know what, I can do more than just academia, and I can actually work with community and use my skills as a historian to make change. And so definitely Dr. Choi Chatterjee. And I mean, everyone at La Plaza is a mentor to me, like Jonathan, Marycruz, Esperanza. Like, I learned so much from them, and it's a privilege to work with them. So I would consider them all to be mentors for me.
Thank you, Chris. Big shout out to you because I always love learning history from you. I would say I think La Plaza is really special because you get to learn these really amazing professionals in the field that have been doing this for over 10 years, or they're probably new into it, but they invest so much research into it. So it's really beautiful to see people that look like you, understand you in these fields, but people that were able to kind of help me in the direction of what career aspects I was able to go. I'll just give out some shout outs. It would be Miguel Ordanana from the Natural History Museum and the Community Science. He's a really big Latino in conservation and community science. So really thankful for him and believing me and opening doors for me. Adelio Olivares, Michelle Jimenez as well. We did a hybrid learning project in which we invited Latino students from, I think it's at MacArthur Park, and their families to get to know more about wildlife. But it's honestly, it's just inviting the community in what you do. And like Chris said, anyone could be a mentor. So a really big shout out to everyone.
Thank you, Marycruz, and thank you, Chris. I'm gonna wrap it up just because we are over a little bit over one already. But yes, definitely mentors are very much part of it. I've been in museums for over 13 years, and I will say, community building and all these different mentorships and people that have been involved have come really in my favor, but also really during the time of crisis and during transition. So I really value that and I appreciate it. And of course, I value also my colleagues that are here that are presenting with me, but also our Cam. So I will pass it over to Cam, and thank you so much for having us here. And we look forward to working with you all very soon. You have our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us, but I'll pass it back over to Cam.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. You guys did a great, wonderful job. Thank you for sharing your personal stories and the way that you've been able to work and share this with all of us in the community and the museum field. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Again, this will be recorded and available on YouTube soon. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And thank you again for everyone who participated today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.